everybody, and welcome back to Suits and Laterals, the show where Chris Green and I discuss the NFL, both on and off the field. I'm your host, Jeff Rich, and as I mentioned, Chris Green is here, and it's the week of the big game. You know, we're not selling anything. We call it Super Bowl Sunday, right, Chris?
Super Bowl week, yeah.
Super Bowl week in your neck of the woods too. What's the I know that you're over on the other side of the bay or up the bay from Santa Clara, but is there a Super Bowl vibe going on in the hometown there in Northern California?
Yeah, it's called Traffic Sucks.
Isn't that called every day that ends with a Y?
It is. It's just worse than normal because, they've got all this stuff going on in Santa Clara over by Levi Stadium. But then they also have all kinds of stuff going on in San Francisco. So, peak traffic time is usually 5 p.m. rush hour in San Francisco. It's like that all the time in San Francisco right now.
Oh, my. That's the thing about the sprawl is that, you have people trying to get from place to place. I'm kind of in the middle of everything, which actually makes me almost immune to it because I'm driving away from everybody driving into the city here in Phoenix. But, it's kind of weird. You mentioned that they're having some events in Santa Clara. I imagine some in San Jose as well, but a majority up, on the small island of San Francisco there. How's the, we're in year 3 of Levi Stadium there in Santa Clara. How is the separation of, the 49ers organization and the nice, the quote-unquote nice stadium in the Bay Area not being in the metropolis of San Francisco?
I think it was a bigger deal when it originally came out. I don't hear a whole lot of grousing about it anymore other than the people that are affected by it down in the Santa Clara area. I mean, there's so many teams out there now that are in the metropolitan area as opposed to the actual cities of their names. So it's one of those things where, as long as they're making money off of it, they don't really care. And this is the week for them to make money off of it.
Well, and they're having events too, so their city gets to make more money than just those 10 home dates a year and the Pac-12 championship, and obviously the Super Bowl or any other neutral site event when it rolls around. It's they're getting more than Glendale, Arizona gets. Glendale, Arizona is basically the venue for the game, so they get game day revenues on parking and concessions and all that. But as far as the event that is the Super Bowl, the week leading up to it, I mean, I guess they, instead of calling the Tuesday, the Wednesday, Thursday event media days, now they're calling, now they're doing that type of reception on Monday and calling it Super Bowl opening night, making sure that it's much like a 16-year-old's birthday party, it's a week-long and perhaps even a month-long event.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like we've talked about in the past, the NFL is an everyday event now. I mean, it's not just it doesn't have an off season anymore. So, and now they've kind of turned Super Bowl. There is no week or days off in between the championship game and the Super Bowl. There's something going on every day out here.
Now, speaking of that, did you happen to tune in for the exhibition event, the pickup game between Jerry Rice's All-Stars and Michael Irvin's All-Stars played back in Hawaii, where the All-Star exhibition that the NFL tries to put on every year is usually played?
I'll be honest, I've never watched a Pro Bowl game ever.
What? That's not really that earth-shattering, though. I mean,
it isn't.
You get to see the finest athletes of the world take on each other, week in and week out. And you could argue that there's a lot more stars on the field, cohesive as a unit in the game that we're looking forward to on Sunday in Santa Clara.
Exactly. Plus, you're getting full effort, and I mean, there's rarely any defense in these games. I mean, I know it's been some of these years have been a little bit better than others, but it's the other All-Star games, I don't know, they've always drawn my interest, whereas this one, it's just, I don't know whether it's because it's at the end of the season or what it is about it. It's never intrigued me at all. And I let's be honest, I don't think it's intrigued most of the public, considering they've been talking about getting rid of it for the last several years.
Let me tell you who's not intrigued by it. The ESPN Monday Night Football crew. I mean, Mike Tirico, John Gruden, they called that game almost as if they were ashamed to be part of it. They said that, they acknowledged lack of effort. They acknowledged lack of contact. they acknowledged that, he had some good form tackling real early on, and that just went away really quickly. I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's not quite two-hand touch, but it's like, you grab something on the player and he stops running. Every running play was just a linebacker and a running back like Oakland's Latavius Murray, just basically finishing the play with an embrace.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And let's be honest, the Senior Bowl got more attention this week than the Pro Bowl did.
Yeah, I actually did not see that. How did the kid from North Dakota State, the Division I AA, it's possible, it's not likely, but we could see a kid from the FCS ranks go number 1 overall in the draft. We got plenty of time to talk about the draft in between. But did you happen to catch Mr. Carson Wentz playing in the Senior Bowl?
I didn't see the game. I kind of researched, just checked into it and see what happened afterward. And, there was a lot of hype about him all week, and he really didn't do anything in the game. He was, I think, like 6 for 10 for 56 yards. He didn't throw any touchdowns, or he didn't really do anything of consequence in the game.
Is there any way to make the NFL All-Star Game appealing? I mean, is there anything they could do, make it like almost like a college alumni challenge, kind of break it up into more than 2 teams like the NHL did with their All-Star Game, where they had divisional All-Star Games and they had like a little mini tournament to be their All-Star Game of 3-on-3 hockey. I mean, do you see any gimmick that the NFL could pull off that could really make it fun, interesting for the fans, and also appealing for the players beyond the almighty dollar?
I don't know if there is or not. I mean, you could talk about moving it into the middle of the season, something like the other sports do, but I don't know if they're willing to do that, and I don't know that players are going to go all out just because there's such a greater chance of injury, I think, in the NFL games than there are in the other All-Star games.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think the gray team beat the white team. It was it sounded like the players' shares for that game were pretty on par with the 1964 NFL championship that one of my middle school teachers used to talk about, how you could stand on the losing sideline and not play and make $18,000. And he just thought that was and of course, the year we're talking about is like 91, 92, when even $18,000 for a professional athlete 30 years before still sounded so ridiculous. And now the Pro Bowl shares are right about on that level, a little higher for the losers at like 29,000. And the winners get like 60 grand. So it's worth it to go out and play that game and try to win it, but obviously not at the cost of causing physical harm to their fellow man.
Well, exactly. I think the only reason it's still around is, I bet agents aren't letting it go away because that's some sort of bonus that they can get for their clients.
Yeah, but you know what? They have, they're basically all-stars in name only, especially considering this year for the 253-man rosters or however many they put on there. There are 133 people total between, people that didn't come because they were injured and replacement players. So, it's an expensive venture. It's a great event for the locals out there in Honolulu, but
hey, a free trip to Hawaii is always a good thing.
Yeah, for the rest of us, it's quickly forgotten. Yeah, but the thing is, if you were flying all the fans to Hawaii, there'd probably be a greater interest in it. But you're only flying the players; they're still watching from their cold living rooms back east.
Exactly.
Yeah, east of Hawaii, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So we've got championship of the season coming up. It's the Broncos and the Panthers. You and I haven't gotten together in a couple weeks, so. Any lingering thoughts from the AFC and NFC championship games as we set down Tom Brady and we said goodbye to the Arizona Cardinals?
Well, when we talked last, I kind of said I thought it was going to come down to which defense was better, and obviously Denver's defense came through. Like they have all year. It really wasn't the offense that carried the team; it was the defense, and they carried them right into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Denver and Carolina is about what I expected. I just, at the 11th hour, I found it difficult to pick against Brady on that stage, even on the road. He was getting Edelman back, and Denver stepped up. Brady didn't play poorly. He did as a result of Denver's defense, but this was Denver's defense shutting down Brady And, quite honestly, Gary Kubiak out coaching Bill Belichick.
Yeah, I mean, you don't usually hear that too often, anybody out coaching Bill Belichick, so that was a rarity. But I'll tell you what, that Denver defense, I mean, Denver's always been the team that's been known for offense, but that defense has carried them this year.
Well, I said it about a quarter into the game that New England's offensive line is inconsequential to, Denver's defensive front seven and Tom Brady. I mean, he either got rid of the ball quickly or he got hit, and sometimes both. In some cases, both things happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, they both made huge impacts on that game. I mean, at this point, I don't think I've ever seen Brady on his back as much as I did in that game.
Yeah, it was a pretty sad scene. I mean, it's a change of the times too. Everybody gets on our actual AFC Championship quarterback, Peyton Manning, about his age, but Brady's getting up there. I mean, it's almost like he kind of hides any diminishing skills he might have, and they get exposed when he just doesn't have the time to sit there and pick defenses apart.
Well, and that's true. But I mean, that's true of any quarterback, too. Even the best quarterbacks are going to have games like that where if their line doesn't stop them and they don't have the time to make a play, I mean, there's only so much they can do. I mean, you could be superhuman, and if you only have a second and a half to 3 seconds to get rid of that ball, that's not enough in most cases.
Right. So, New England back to the drawing board. I mean, it's a matter of keeping guys healthy, having some balance. They didn't have any balance, so they didn't have a running game. No offense to James White, but it's just not there when, when you're playing without Deion Lewis and LeGarrette Blount's not helping you. There's just nothing you can do when you're dropping back every play. There's no honesty with the Denver defense. You say, all right, we know you're throwing the ball. You might do a pseudo type running play with one of those bubbles out to. Out to Amendola or out to Edelman. But at the end of the day, you're throwing the ball just about every play. And when they ran the ball, you saw how little success they had.
Absolutely. I think that's something they're definitely going to have to address for next year is that running game. I mean, they've done it with smoke and mirrors with the running game for the last several years, and I think they really need to take a look at that if they expect to get back to the Super Bowl next year. I mean, it's funny to say that just because they've been in the championship game. I think it's 5 straight years, I believe. But they still need something else to take that next step.
Right. So on the other side of the equation, you have the Carolina Panthers. They only dropped one game all season, and they basically beat every team they play because Atlanta got them, got them to split the season series. So there's no team that went out there and just beat Carolina every time they played each other. So, Denver's got their work cut out for them. We don't know how Thomas Davis is going to be, but we know that, you could define Carolina as a unit defensively, probably more so than any other team in the NFL. I mean, you look at some of the other defenses, you think of Von Miller when you think of the Broncos defense, and of course you think of Kuechly when you think of the Carolina defense. Mm-hmm. But you have Josh Norman and they have a really good secondary. Kurt Coleman really stepped up in the NFC Championship game. That they're great up front. I mean, Jared Allen's just kind of a piece that they added on, which is what free agency in the NFL is all about. It's about supplementing needs, not trying to find a foundation to build around on the open market. Carolina, Cam Newton, I know it's cliche, but he makes the players around him better. He made Ted, we've seen Ted Ginn play for a number of other teams. We'd never heard of Corey Brown unless you're a diehard Ohio State fan until this year, and he just makes them all better. Greg Olson's a great player in his own right, but what Cam Newton does, he makes his offensive line look better too because he's got the escapability. He can read the play. He knows what's coming, so none of his offensive linemen truly get exposed.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Newton has really taken the next step this year. I've felt. I mean. We've talked about this on and off all season. I didn't think much of Carolina, even though they kept winning, and it's like, whoa, you better stop picking against them because, I mean, other than one game, they haven't lost this year. So he's really taken the offense by the horn, and between Olsen and Ginn and Brown and the occasional running of Stewart and Tolbert, they've really had a great offense going this year. So I think Denver's going to have a tough time controlling them in this game. I mean, quite honestly, I was shocked by how easily they took it to Arizona in that game. I expected a lot more out of Arizona, and I mean, Palmer definitely didn't play a very good game at all, but still, I was still shocked by how easy they made it look.
Yeah, what do you do if you're Arizona going forward?
I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald's going to be a year older, and I mean, Palmer's obviously starting to get up there as well. So, I mean, they were such a good team all year, and even in that game against Green Bay, they didn't look that great. So, I mean, they kind of got exposed there, and then you picked in this game. You said Carolina was going to come out there and take it to them, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I didn't remember doing that. I guess that, I was just thinking. I was just thinking, and I was thinking clearly, and it ended up working out. That really happened, Chris. I promise you that. So, all right. So, aside from determining the championship of the highest professional league of the most popular sport in the land, there's quite the sideshow to it. It's been defined as a circus. I had it here in Arizona last year. I had it back in '07. It's a little different because it's sprawled out. Parties are in Scottsdale, parties are in downtown Phoenix. The game's out in Glendale, Arizona. It's one of those things that I can remember almost as much as I remember watching any of my own teams is watching this game, itself. I've kind of, I said it on our Sunday morning radio show last week that, this game, the magnitude of this game, when I was in the military, I didn't get Christmas Day off. I didn't get Thanksgiving Day off. But you know what? The Super Bowl was played on Monday morning when I was stationed over in Japan, and guess who didn't have to go to work until 2 hours after the game ended? Pretty much all non-key personnel. This game is really viewed, this whole day is viewed as an event and almost like a pseudo-holiday that doesn't actually involve any, paid time off.
Absolutely. I mean, the Super Bowl is an experience. I mean, it's not just a game. It is an experience, whether it's the people that are going to attend it, the thousands of Super Bowl parties people are going to have at their homes. Like you said, the military people who get to kick back and watch this game and really enjoy something when they've got a lot more in their life going on as it is. So, I mean, it's quite the special day. I don't know how else to put it, I guess.
What's your earliest Super Bowl memory? What game do you can you remember seeing and watching and the final score and everything like that?
When I was growing up, I wasn't a huge football person. I was always a baseball person. So I really the first Super Bowl I really remember was the '88 Super Bowl. I believe that was the one with the Bengals and the 49ers. If I'm not
that
mistaken.
sounds about right. About right. That's the one where if Cincinnati gets a late kick return. I believe the guy's name was Stanley Jennings. And Montana's got the ball. Basically he's got 80 yards to go, and everybody's tense. And and San Francisco had been there before. They had their moments in the clutch, especially with that group. And Joe Montana just relaxed, so he kind of looked up and he pointed out John Candy in the stands. He's like, "Hey, that's John Candy up there." And suddenly they put the drive together. Montana hits Taylor for the game winner. So that's a really memorable one. It's kind of funny that Cincinnati's only been to 2 Super Bowls, and and in both cases they ran into Joe Montana and the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Montana. How many did he end up winning? 4 or 5?
He ended up winning 4. That was the big deal about Brady trying to pursue 5 again. So
yeah, I mean, those teams were so great to watch. When you had Bill Walsh first, then George Seifert was there for the last one. So it was just, like I said, that was the one that really I remember as probably the first Super Bowl that I really got into.
Yeah, San Francisco, that used to be a real point of pride with them. Going into that Ravens game a couple of years ago, was that they were chasing down their 6th, and they would have separated themselves from Pittsburgh by having the 6-0 or the 7-0. So that's definitely something that they wanted to do, and they just couldn't get the ball across the goal line. And for all the grief we give Pete Carroll about neglecting Marshawn Lynch at the goal line, how about it for Jim Harbaugh not giving the ball to Frank Gore in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questionable decisions, and the Super Bowl is the biggest game of the year, so just everything is ratcheted up a notch. And I mean, you have, instead of thousands of fans watching you, you have millions of fans watching you.
Yeah, just to kind of share my own experience, I go back a few years farther back. My dad was a big football guy, so I have zero memory of Super Bowl 19 between the Niners and the Dolphins, though I mentioned a Bengals Niners game that happened before that. But I vividly remember the 1985 season. I remember the Browns going 8-8. I remember the Jets winning 10 straight and then losing 5 straight and then getting knocked off by New England in the wild card. I believe that New England was the first team to reach the Super Bowl by having to win 3 games on the road. Before them, the Raiders were the first team to emerge as a wild card team and win the Super Bowl. But I remember that those 85 Bears. It's obviously a very memorable team. I mean, it's kind of the 72 Dolphins of my lifetime because I was born in 1978. They were 15-1 in the regular season. They end up going to the Super Bowl and winning that game. So they end up being a better 18-1 than the Patriots were. 8 years ago now.
Yeah, that was the Refrigerator Perry and that Jim McMahon and the Ditka.
Oh yeah, well and it's kind of sad that they only made one game, but they're in a better place than the Buffalo Bills, who represented the AFC 4 years in a row. They couldn't bring home the Lombardi Trophy. Only really came close to the one time when
Norwood missed the kick. Yep.
It wasn't a chip shot. Everybody treats that like it was like a 22-yard kick. It was like a 41-yard field goal. That's a missable kick. Probably not in that situation. It's pretty unforgivable, but it wasn't like it wasn't like a Blair Walsh type of deal.
No, definitely was not a chip shot.
So, one of the other things that I think back is how often the Super Bowl game was a blowout. We just got one a couple years ago with the Seahawks over the Broncos by the score of 43-8 in Super Bowl 48 in the Meadowlands. But what I like about now is that there haven't been many dynasties. Even with the Patriots, look how spread out that first run of wins were. Versus
15 years.
Yeah, and then they win. Then they win last year. So, you don't have the Cowboys there every year. You don't have the Bills. You don't have the same teams there 2-3 years in a row. It almost feels like the playoffs and the title itself are up for grabs. We have one team in the Carolina Panthers that's going to just their second Super Bowl in franchise history. Of course, they've only been around for 21 seasons now. And then you have the Broncos, who have gone a whole lot. They got the wins in 98, 99 over Green Bay and Atlanta, as Elway rode off into the sunset. And, they're in their 8th Super Bowl. A lot of people forget, Elway lost 3. Manning's lost the 1, and then Craig Morton lost 1 to the Cowboys, some years before my time. But, it's kind of old hat for these Denver fans. It's Peyton Manning's 4th Super Bowl. He's going for his 2nd win. He could potentially ride out into the sunset. How would you compare the careers of like an Elway and a Manning? And is there any circumstance that brings Manning back to the playing field in 2016?
I don't know if he's going to come back either way. I mean, he's had injury issues this year. He just looked terrible pretty much for the entire time he was out there. I mean, I'd say, I guess the last couple weeks he's looked okay, but he's not Peyton Manning we're all used to seeing. So I think win or lose, this will probably be it for him. Obviously, he's going to want to try to win and probably throw everything he's got out there to make that happen, which could not necessarily be a good thing for the Broncos if he's trying to do too much.
All right. And on the other side, you have Cam Newton playing in, obviously, his first Super Bowl. But he's been in the spotlight. He won a national championship in junior college. He won a national championship at Auburn. Carolina is kind of the team that really doesn't have any expectation. Even coming into this season, I don't think that. I think people would have said you're crazy if you thought this team was going to be 15-1 and representing the NFC in the Super Bowl.
I would have said you were crazy.
Yeah. I mean, at least the 15-1 part. It just felt like there were better teams in the NFC. But the reality is, they knocked off the Packers. They beat the Cardinals. They had to beat a Seattle team that's won the NFC 2 years in a row. So I mean, they definitely earned their spot.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that they solidified it with the win over Arizona, I think that there's no doubt that they're backing into this. And if they win this game, I don't think that there's going to be any huge surprise over it. But if you leave his race out of it, is Cam Newton potentially approaching new horizons with the new prototype quarterback and the attitude that comes with playing the position, at least in his case?
I don't know if I'd call him the prototype quarterback just because there isn't any quarterbacks out there that have his abilities, to be honest. I mean, he's huge. He can run with the ball. He can throw to the ball. I mean, he's just got so many things going for him. I just don't see anybody else out there right now that is him. I mean, that could change in a couple of years. I know there was the one quarterback. That's it, Watson. Yep, sorry. That's who I was thinking of.
So I mean, he's a different type of player, but there are a lot of players that feel that if he could do it, that it can be done, and I think that's a big deal because we saw trying to adjust the NFL to, and I don't mean to denigrate it by calling it this, but like a college style of quarterback, and there are many different styles played because there's 125 teams at the highest level of college football, but. We saw Mike McCoy adjust the Denver offense back to Tim Tebow, and it had moderately successful results. But at the end of the day, they went hunting for Peyton Manning that offseason. Carolina's never really said, okay, Cam, try to be like Derek Anderson so that we're the same team, so they play an NFL style. They've never done that. They've just let him play his game. And I think that as his decision-making's gotten better, Ron Rivera's really entrusted him to do more and more with the offense. And we saw it, and the end result is 15-1 in a spot in the Super Bowl.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he's grown from leaps and bounds. I mean, last year he didn't do a whole lot. I mean, I know he was injured for some of that, but it was just like the light clicked on this year. I mean, not to say he wasn't already a good quarterback, because he definitely had been, but last year was just kind of a questionable year for him, and this year he just went full force ahead.
Okay. I'm calling you to the carpet, man. What happens on Sunday? Who is the champion of Super Bowl 50?
You know what? I've gone against Carolina all year. I'm not going against them now. I'm going to say Carolina wins it.
I look at this game as a complete toss-up, and then I just start to look at some of the weapons that Peyton Manning has at his disposal, even if they're neutralized to a full extent. Like Carolina neutralized Arizona's weapons. Mm-hmm. I think that those defenses are going to neutralize the big play threats on offense. I think Manning's going to make a few mistakes, but I think at the end of the day he's going to get away with it unless Cam just creates on a level that we haven't seen before. I like the Denver Broncos in this game. I'm going to go with the final score of 24-20. I think it's close.
All right. I'm going to go 31-17 Carolina.
All right. And in the interest of full disclosure, we both grew up in Cleveland. Neither one of us has any desire whatsoever to see John Elway hoist a trophy. Is that just me, or is that a pretty correct status quo statement coming from at least people with Cleveland ties?
I have no interest in seeing John Elway hoist the trophy, though I wouldn't complain if Peyton got a second one.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. And you should be with us next week because we're going to keep on recording Suits and Laterals on the Four Lights FM Podcast Network. You can download us on iTunes and find our show site at suitsandlaterals.com. Follow us on Twitter at suitslaterals. And follow Chris on Twitter at CGRN731. You can follow me, Jeff Rich, at ByJeffRich, ByJeffRich. And we will see you next week when we have a Super Bowl champion. Have a great week, everyone. This has been Suits and Laterals.